When Officer Jake Mallory first met Rex, the German Shepherd wasn't the calm, disciplined K9 legend he would become. He was a bundle of raw energy and sharp instincts. Talented, yes, but untamed. Jake, a seasoned officer known for his quiet focus, was paired with him during the department's new K9 program. Many thought the match wouldn't work, but from the first training session, something clicked. Jake didn't raise his voice. He didn't yank leashes or bark orders. Instead, he watched. He let Rex make mistakes, then corrected them with patience. Slowly, trust formed. Rex began watching Jake the same way. Eye contact turned into signals. Commands became gestures. And within months, they moved as a single unit, two minds, one mission. Their first major case together sealed the bond. It was a missing child call on a bitter winter night. Time was against them, and the trail had gone cold. While others gave up, Jake knelt beside Rex and whispered, "Let's find them, boy." Rex bolted into the woods, nose to the ground, instincts sharp. Within 20 minutes, he found the child curled under a tree, alive but freezing. That night, the department saw what Jake already knew. Rex wasn't just a good dog. He was extraordinary. The duo became legends inside the precinct. Officers would say, "Send Mallory and Rex. They'll get it done." Drug busts, building sweeps, suspect chases, they handled it all. But it wasn't just their skill that earned respect. It was their quiet rhythm. Jake didn't brag. Rex didn't bark unless he had to. They just showed up, did the work, and left as quietly as they came. Off duty, their bond deepened. Jake didn't see Rex as a tool or even a partner. He saw him as family. Rex rode shotgun in the patrol SUV, curled up at Jake's feet in the office, and stayed alert at his side during every break. At home, Rex would rest on the rug near Jake's bed, only sleeping when his partner did. They shared sunrises after night shifts. They shared silence after tough calls. They shared a language made of looks and trust. Jake often said, "He's the only one who truly gets me." But as deep as their bond ran, neither of them could have predicted what lay ahead. The job they both loved would soon pull them apart in a way neither was prepared for, and the countdown to that day had already begun. It all started on a quiet evening in early spring. Jake and Rex were finishing up a routine patrol when a call came in. Shots fired, potential hostage situation. The adrenaline kicked in immediately. They rushed to the scene, the city's lights reflecting off wet streets, the tension thick in the air. Jake, heart pounding, knew Rex would be right by his side, ready to do what they did best. There was no fear in Rex's eyes, only determination. This was supposed to be just another case, another night in the life of a K9 officer, but it would change everything. When they arrived at the location, a rundown apartment complex, the situation was more intense than expected. The suspect was armed and barricaded inside. Officers to set up a perimeter, but time was slipping away. Jake and Rex were called in for a tactical search. They entered the building, moving cautiously through the dimly lit halls. Rex's ears twitched, his nose working furiously as he searched for the scent of the suspect. As they approached a corner, the suspect opened fire. A single shot rang out, and chaos erupted. Jake instinctively shielded Rex, but in the process, a bullet struck him in the back. Pain exploded through Jake's body, and he stumbled, nearly losing his balance. In that moment, everything slowed down. The sounds of gunfire, the shouting officers, the crackling of radio transmissions. But through it all, Jake heard something more important. Rex's growl, low and protective. Without hesitation, Rex lunged forward, chasing the suspect. His bark echoed through the building. In the madness of the pursuit, Rex found the suspect and subdued him, biting down hard until backup arrived to take control. The situation ended in a moment of stark relief, but Jake wasn't feeling that relief. Blood soaked through his uniform as he collapsed to the ground, the weight of the injury crashing down on him. Paramedics rushed to his side, but it was too late. The damage was severe. Jake would need surgery and months of recovery, but it wasn't just the physical pain that left him shattered. It was the realization that his career was over. he wouldn't be able to serve alongside Rex anymore. The bond they'd formed, built on countless hours of training, sweat, and sacrifice, would be torn apart by a wound. As Jake lay on the stretcher, staring up at the hospital lights, he whispered to himself, "I'm sorry, boy." Rex, who had been by his side through everything, watched from a distance, his dark eyes filled with confusion. The hardest goodbye was about to come. As Jake lay in the hospital, his thoughts were consumed by what would happen next. The pain in his back was intense, but it was the emptiness he felt when he thought about Rex that truly cut through him. The thought of never having his loyal companion by his side again hit harder than any physical wound. But the reality was clear. Jake would be forced to retire early. His injuries were too severe, and the department needed to reassess their K-9 team. In the weeks that followed, Jake focused on healing, attending physical therapy, and adjusting to life outside the force. The world he knew, a world of sirens, adrenaline, and the constant presence of his dog, felt like a distant memory. He spent his days in a quiet home, slowly trying to rebuild his life. But every day was haunted by the thought of Rex, his constant partner who was now somewhere out there, working with someone else. Rex, too, had his own battle to face. For a while, the transition to a new handler was difficult. Rex had always been known for his focus and intelligence, but now he seemed different. There was a sadness in his eyes that no one could explain. His new handler tried to engage with him, but Rex wasn't the same dog. He worked well, still managed to complete tasks, and responded to commands with precision. But something was missing. His sharpness, his intensity. They were there, but it was as if a piece of him had been lost. His handler noticed it first. During training, Rex's tail didn't wag like it used to. He wouldn't leap forward with the usual enthusiasm. There was a quiet resignation to his movements, as if he was waiting for someone. It wasn't until a month later that the handler, frustrated but concerned, finally spoke up. "He's waiting for his person," he said. "It's like he doesn't care for anything else." No one knew for sure, but the department could see it too. Rex wasn't just waiting for a command. He was waiting for Jake, his partner, his family. Back in his small apartment, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he had left something unfinished, something vital. He missed Rex's presence so deeply it made the walls feel smaller, the days longer. At night, when he closed his eyes, he could still feel the weight of Rex's head resting on his knee, or hear the rhythmic sound of the dog's breathing as they sat together after a long shift. But as much as Jake yearned for Rex, he also knew it wasn't just about him. He wasn't sure if Rex even remembered him, if that bond had survived the separation. That uncertainty gnawed at him until one day he got a call. It was the department, and they had news. The phone call came on a brisk morning, catching Jake off guard as he sat on his couch, nursing a cup of coffee. He almost didn't recognize the number on his screen, but something in his gut told him to answer. "Jake, it's Officer Daniels from the department. I've got news about Rex," the voice on the other end said, a familiar tone of concern in his voice. "Rex is being retired. We've had some discussions here, and, well, we know you were his handler for years." Jake sat up straight, the words hitting him like a tidal wave. Rex had been through so much, had served so long. He had always imagined Rex would get a quiet retirement, but to hear that he was officially leaving the force felt like a reality he wasn't ready for. "Is he okay?" Jake asked, his voice thick with emotion. "He's doing fine," Officer Daniels replied. "But here's the thing. The department's allowing his adoption, and, well, we thought of you first. He's had some trouble adjusting with the new handler, Jake. He's not the same dog. We think. He's waiting for you." The words were surreal, like a dream that didn't quite make sense, but felt too real to ignore. Jake's heart raced as he processed the offer. It had been 3 years since he last saw Rex. 3 years since he'd kissed his partner's head, stroked his fur, and looked into those deep brown eyes. "I'll take him," Jake said without hesitation. "I'll come get him. Just tell me when and where." The officer paused for a moment. "You understand, Jake, it won't be easy. He's been through a lot, and so have you. It might not be the reunion you're hoping for, but he's waiting. He's out there, and he still remembers." Jake stood up, gripping the phone tighter. His legs felt weak, but a flood of hope surged through him. He was going to see his dog again. He was going to bring Rex home. It didn't matter how long it had been or how much time had passed. Rex needed him, and he needed Rex. The bond they had wasn't something that could be broken by time or distance. As the conversation ended, Jake sat quietly for a moment, his mind reeling with the possibilities. A part of him was afraid that maybe the bond wasn't as strong as he hoped, afraid that Rex might not even recognize him. But that fear was overshadowed by something stronger, the belief that they were meant to be together again. He packed a bag, grabbed his car keys, and set out on a long drive. His heart was racing, and he couldn't help but replay memories of the good times with Rex, the quiet moments, the shared glances, the unspoken trust. And this time, it wasn't just a goodbye. It was a second chance. Jake's hands gripped the steering wheel with a tension he hadn't felt in years. The road stretched out before him, each mile a reminder of the years that had passed, the life he had rebuilt without Rex by his side. He had expected the drive to feel long, but in reality, it felt like an eternity. The distance between his small apartment and the department's location seemed endless, as if the universe was giving him one last test, one last measure of patience before he could hold his partner again. The car hummed along the highway, the rhythmic sound of the engine matching the nervous beat of Jake's heart. His mind raced in 100 different directions. Would Rex remember him? What would the reunion be like? Jake knew it had been 3 years, but the thought of Rex's eyes lighting up when he recognized him was something he clung to. It was the one thing keeping him moving forward, even though doubt began to creep in. He thought back to the day Rex had been taken from him. The look in Rex's eyes as the officers had driven away, the uncertainty in both their gazes. Rex had trusted him completely, but Jake hadn't been able to keep his promise to stay by his side. How could he know that the dog he had trained, lived with, and fought beside would still want to see him again? "Come on, Rex," Jake muttered under his breath. "I'm coming, buddy. I'm coming back for you." The drive was quiet except for the sound of his breathing and the soft hum of the tires on the road. It was a moment of reflection, a time for Jake to think about everything that had happened. His injury, his time away from the force, and how much he had missed his canine partner. He missed the way Rex would nudge him when he needed attention, the way he would curl up on the couch beside him after a long shift, the unspoken companionship they had shared. Jake had told himself that he would never make the mistake of getting too attached to another dog again. But Rex wasn't just any dog. He was the dog, the one who had been there through everything, the one who had saved his life more times than he could count. As he neared his destination, the first signs of dawn began to break through the sky. The colors of the sunrise seemed to reflect the quiet hope blooming in Jake's chest. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel something other than uncertainty. He allowed himself to believe that, maybe just maybe, Rex would remember him. The car turned into the parking lot of the precinct, and Jake's heart skipped a beat. There, waiting, was the dog who had once been his whole world. Jake's car rolled to a stop in the parking lot, the engine shutting off with a soft click. His heart was pounding now, louder than ever. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves, though no amount of preparation could have prepared him for what was about to happen. The moment he'd been dreaming of, hoping for, was within reach. He stepped out of the car, the cool morning air hitting his face, and felt a sudden rush of anticipation. His gaze swept across the precinct lot, empty except for a few officers arriving for their morning shifts. Then, at the far end of the parking lot, he saw him. Rex. The dog was standing still, watching Jake, but not moving. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Rex's fur had grayed around his muzzle, and his once vibrant eyes seemed softer, more weathered, but they still carried that spark, the same spark Jake remembered. Jake hesitated, unsure of what to do next. He wanted to run to him, to call his name and scoop him up, but something held him back. He needed to make sure. Rex's ears twitched. His body remained tense, but Jake could see it now. Rex's eyes locked onto him. There was recognition there, even if it was subtle. It was the tiniest flicker of hope, but it was enough. Jake stepped forward slowly, his heart in his throat. "Rex, buddy," Jake called softly, his voice trembling with emotion. For a moment, Rex didn't move. He stood frozen, almost as if he were processing the moment, uncertain of whether the man before him was truly the one he'd spent years alongside. But then, just as the silence threatened to swallow the moment, Rex's tail twitched. Then it wagged. Jake's breath caught in his chest, and that was all it took. With a sudden burst of energy, Rex bolted toward Jake, his paws pounding against the concrete as he let out a joyous bark. In the next instant, Rex leaped into Jake's arms, his massive body practically knocking Jake off balance. For a split second, Jake was thrown back to that day when Rex had first jumped into his arms, full of life and enthusiasm, but this time was different. This time, Rex wasn't the young pup he'd been 3 years ago. He was older, more mature, and yet he was still the same dog, the dog who had saved his life more times than Jake could count. Tears welled in Jake's eyes as Rex licked his face, barking and wiggling with excitement. It was as if all the pain, the separation, the uncertainty of the past 3 years had melted away in that one moment. "I missed you too, boy," Jake whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Around them, the few officers who had witnessed the reunion couldn't help but smile. Some wiped away tears, moved by the raw emotion of the scene unfolding before them. This wasn't just a dog and his handler. It was a bond that had never truly broken, no matter the years apart. Jake held Rex tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of his partner. The world felt whole again. The world seemed to slow down as Jake and Rex settled into a new routine. Gone were the days of chasing down suspects and racing against time. The adrenaline-fueled life of a police officer had been replaced with long, lazy mornings and peaceful afternoons. But in many ways, this new chapter felt even more rewarding, the bond between Jake and Rex stronger than ever. Jake moved out of his small apartment and into a house just outside the city, a quiet, secluded place where he could heal both physically and emotionally. The house had a large backyard, and he knew it would be perfect for Rex. The first time he opened the door to let Rex out into the yard, the dog bolted with surprising energy, running in circles, his tail wagging like mad. For the first time in years, Rex seemed to be truly free. Jake spent his days taking care of Rex, taking long walks through the neighborhood, and spending hours in the yard, watching Rex play fetch or lie in the sun. It was a simple life, but one filled with meaning. Rex had always been more than just a working dog. He had been Jake's partner, his best friend, his constant companion. Now they were both adjusting to a slower pace, but it was exactly what they both needed. Every evening, as the sun began to set, Jake and Rex would sit on the porch together. Jake would stroke Rex's fur, his mind wandering back to the countless nights they had spent on stakeouts, the long hours of training, and the unspoken trust they had developed over the years. "I never thought it would be like this," Jake would often say to Rex, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Rex would look up at him, his dark eyes full of understanding, and nudge Jake's hand for more attention. They didn't need words. They had always communicated in their own way. The world around them had changed, but the one constant had always been each other. The trust they shared, earned through years of partnership and sacrifice, was now their greatest gift. Even though Rex had retired from the force, he still carried himself with the same quiet dignity he had shown when he was working. He would occasionally glance at Jake, as if waiting for the next command or mission, but Jake would simply smile and say, "Not today, buddy. Today we rest." On weekends, Jake would take Rex to the nearby park, where they would meet up with old colleagues. The officers would still look at them with admiration, some even asking if Jake ever missed the force. But his answer was always the same: "I have everything I need right here." And for Rex, that was enough. It wasn't about the sirens or the chase anymore. It was about being with Jake, who had always been his person and who would never leave him again. As the months passed, the bond between Jake and Rex only grew stronger. What had started as a professional partnership had blossomed into something more profound, something that couldn't be measured by time or tasks. It was love, loyalty, and companionship in its truest form. Jake found peace in the simple joys of life. His morning coffee with Rex by his side, the way the dog would follow him everywhere in the house, as though making sure no part of Jake's world was ever without him. When Jake would head to the kitchen to cook, Rex would sit by the door, watching him with his sharp, attentive eyes, ready for whatever small scraps might come his way. It was these little moments, the everyday ones, that made Jake realize just how much he had missed. But as much as they had settled into this peaceful life, there was a lingering thought in Jake's mind. He knew that Rex wasn't just any dog. Rex had been trained to work, to serve. Even though he was retired, it was clear to Jake that Rex's instincts never truly faded. One afternoon, while Jake was out in the yard, he heard a familiar sound, a bark, deep and alert. He turned to see Rex standing by the gate, his body tense, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. Jake followed his line of sight and saw a group of men walking through the neighborhood, looking somewhat out of place. Rex's posture stiffened, and he took a step toward the gate, his focus unwavering. Jake knew instantly what was happening. Without thinking, he called out to Rex, his voice firm, "Stay." But Rex had always trusted his instincts above all else. Without hesitation, Rex bolted toward the men, barking loudly. The men froze, taken aback by the sudden appearance of the dog. Jake rushed forward, calling for Rex to stop, but the dog wasn't backing down. It wasn't an aggressive stance, it was a protective one. The men turned around quickly and walked off, disappearing down the street. Jake reached Rex's side, his heart racing. Rex stood still on high alert, his gaze never leaving the direction the men had gone. Jake knelt beside him, scratching his ears. "Good boy," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration, "always protecting, even when you don't have to." The moment passed, but it was a reminder. Rex might have retired, but he was still the same dog who had saved lives, who had fought beside Jake through thick and thin. And now, in this quiet life, he was still the protector, the watchful guardian of the home they had built together. That evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sky turn from orange to purple, Jake whispered to Rex, "You're more than just a dog, boy. You've always been more." Rex nuzzled into Jake's side, content, knowing that this time they would never have to part again. They had found their forever,